Hello everybody and welcome to Managing My Mental Health as a Frontline Care Staff, COVID-19 crisis. As you all know, we're in very uncertain times right now, and I suppose crisis responses have kicked in all over the world. And as part of the crisis response, we are specifically looking at frontline care staff, frontline nurses, doctors, and staff who are supporting our most vulnerable population, managing their own mental health during this crisis. There's a huge amount being asked of frontline staff at the moment, and it's really important that we take the time to make sure that you are keeping yourselves well, because if you're not kept well, you're not going to be able to care for other people. So my name's Ailish Mooney. I'm the Senior Clinical Psychologist in Cheeverstown. Most of you have probably met me before. For those of you who haven't, you're bound to meet me at some point in the future. This recording of trainings to be sent out across our library is new to me, so be kind. It's going to take us a bit of time to get used to the way of kind of giving these kind of presentations when we're not standing in front of you. And for those of you who've been at my trainings before, you know I tend to do lots of walking around and moving around a lot during my presentations. So it's a tad uncomfortable for me doing it this way, but we will endeavour to proceed. So managing my mental health, COVID-19, current situation, they're very volatile, very uncertain, very complex and ambiguous times. So it's VOCA is the kind of acronym we use for that in psychology worlds. And when we're in volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous times, it's difficult to keep up. It's difficult to keep our anxiety at a manageable level, I suppose. So the world is changing. It is hard to keep up with what's going on. And more than that, our work is changing. And I suppose we're focusing on keeping people safe, which is quite different maybe to how we were 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, when we were kind of focused on making people's quality of life as good as possible and working on all of the kind of higher level engagement activities. And now we're back to basics. We're back to keeping people safe, keeping people secure and keeping people reassured. Fear and anxiety are at an all-time high, and the world is asking a huge amount from frontline healthcare staff, and it can feel overwhelming. So the whole purpose of this presentation is to remind you how important it is to take care of yourself, both physically and mentally, during this high stress period. So, taking care of your body. The first thing, and probably the most important thing I'll tell you throughout this presentation, is to get enough sleep. Between 6 and 8 hours a night is optimal. I know it's a lot easier said than done at the moment. Your brain might feel like it's going at 100 miles an hour. But here are some tips on getting a good night's sleep. So the first thing is go to bed early. Don't leave it too late. Being overtired can actually make it more difficult to fall asleep. Avoid sleeping in. So especially on days you're off or if you're working from home, avoid staying in bed longer than usual. Maintaining a consistent sleep-wake routine is the most important thing to keeping our sleep schedule on track. That means no napping during the day, keeping a regular schedule for bedtime and a regular schedule for waking times. Before you go to bed, allocate at least half an hour to an hour as wind down time. And that means relaxing in a room with dim lighting and engaging in non-stimulating activities like watching reruns of your favourite TV shows, doing crossword puzzles, or reading a good old-fashioned paper book. It also means staying away from electronics in that hour before bed. So electronics, the blue light from electronics can impact your circadian rhythm. So having anything kind of with blue light backgrounds is going to affect how easy it is for you to fall asleep. Now there are blue light filters on phones and things like that, and they do help, but ideally what we're saying is for at least half an hour before bed, really just avoid screen time. And that is particularly important at the moment in terms of limiting your news intake before bed. So all of us are spending hours probably of the day looking at updated Twitter feeds, looking at updated news on the Journal, on RTE News, seeing what's going on in terms of the coronavirus crisis. And we are spending so much time in taking this news that it's feeding our anxiety. So it is really important not to look at the news just before bed, because it is going to affect your thought processes, and it is going to help raise your anxiety. So looking at your sleep environment is important too, making sure that your room is dark. So if you don't have blackout blinds, ideally, having something heavier on your curtains to keep out light is good, and making sure that the room is kept at room temperature. So that means not too hot and not too cold. Anywhere between I think the temperatures are between like 24 and 27 degrees is the ideal. Limit your caffeine and alcohol to intake. So especially caffeine, coffee is probably keeping most of us going at the moment, teas and coffees, but it stays in your system. Caffeine stays in your system for about 8 hours. So really you don't want to have tea or coffee up to 8 hours before bedtime if you're having difficulty sleeping. Now, if you normally drink a thing of coffee 2 or 3 hours before bed, and that's part of your normal routine, and you're sleeping normally, that's fine, continue with it. But if it is impacting your sleep, limiting your caffeine intake. That also includes things like Coke, Fanta, fizzy drinks that have caffeine included in them. And try to avoid using alcohol to help you go to sleep, because while it might help initially, really it's just going to lead to long-term difficulties. And then lastly, try not to catastrophize sleep disruptions. So it doesn't help to panic over losing a couple nights sleep. It is pretty normal in high stress times to have more disrupted sleep, and your sleep cycle will get back to normal. So it's just about putting a little bit of extra effort into your sleep hygiene routine, making sure that you are doing your usual routine in the half an hour before to bed. So whether that's taking off your makeup or moisturising your face or brushing your teeth or getting into sleepwear or saying goodnight to your kids, telling stories, whatever it is part of your normal routine to continue doing that sleep hygiene routine. And as I say, avoiding electronics and news before bed. Other parts of taking care of your body include eating a balanced diet. So anxiety can lead people to over or under eat. So it's really, really important to try and eat 3 healthy meals per day and to limit snacking. So try not to eat things that are very high in sugar. Try and make sure that you are getting enough to eat, that you're taking time for yourself to actually sit down and have a lunch. Even if that lunch break is only 15 minutes long, it is really important to take the time to sit down and eat a healthy, balanced diet. Staying physically active. So given the difficulties of working out in small spaces and without familiar equipment of gyms and the usual routines of exercise, it's important to try and stay as physically active as possible. So using online exercise videos, lifting soup cans for weights, taking daily socially distant walks, obviously. Exercising in the home can be challenging, but given I suppose how much we're being restricted and limited in terms of getting out and about at the moment, it is one way of at least getting your body stretching and moving. There's loads of online yoga videos and exercise videos, and I know that some of the very popular fitness gurus are doing free online classes at the moment as well, so really do try and access those. And then monitor stress and tension in your body. So muscle tension can lead to pain and discomfort in your body. Stretch every single day. Stretch every morning and every evening. Try online yoga classes. Use a massage ball to help you work out tension in your body. Take hot showers and baths. And do whatever you can to try and relax your muscles. Take a second to look inwards into your body and see, where do you hold your stress? For some people, they hold it in their neck and shoulders. Some people hold stress in their back. Some people hold it in their stomach and they end up with digestive discomfort. So where in your body are you holding stress, and what can you do to try and relieve some of that stress? And as I say, one of the most important and simple things that you can do is stretching every single morning and every single evening. So moving on to taking care of your mind. The first thing is keeping up with information. So while staying up to date with coronavirus information is important, and I couldn't possibly ask you not to do that, it is really important to mention to only use reputable sources to find out information. So use the HSE website or the World Health Organization. They tend to be the most reputable sources. But also consider the timing of the information. It's not helpful to constantly check Twitter, news feeds, etc. So what we do recommend is scheduling in times in the day to look at news, and try not to look at the news outside of those times. So lunchtime news and evening news are often good time for updates, and I suppose figures tend to be released in the evening news, 6 o'clock news, 9 o'clock news. But again, just a reminder, don't look at the news just before bed. Give yourself an hour before bed where you're not looking at either social media or news outlets. Using the concept of worry time can be helpful. So if worry gets overwhelming, try and put aside a set time for it. So 30 minutes every day. It might seem counterintuitive, but can actually really help reduce your worry. So setting a daily half-hour worry period at the same time and place every day helps us to stay in the present moment for the rest of the day. So if you know, okay, well, I have this allotted slot every day that I can spend time worrying about things, I can try and come up with plans, I can organise my thoughts, then it allows you to come back to the present moment in the rest of the day, so that if you notice a worry going through your mind, or you notice that you're ruminating over something that's causing you a lot of anxiety, you can say, I'm going to put that aside, I'm going to think about it later in my worry time, and I'm going to come back to the moment and focus on what I'm doing at the moment. So during the day, I suppose try distinguishing between worries over which you have little or no control and worries and problems you can influence. Then that helps you to make a plan around that, because we cannot control certain things and we can't plan around them. But there are other things that are within our control, and that's where our focus should be. Taking care of your mind continued. So one of the, I suppose, the most important messages that I'm going to give you today is about staying connected. It's important to mention that the language around social distancing is changing, and we are starting to call it physical distancing. And the reason for that is, while it is so important at the moment in order to stop the spread of coronavirus to stay physically distant from as many people as possible, we should never be staying socially distant from people. Staying connected with people we love is what keeps us sane. It is what keeps us grounded and what keeps us linked with our communities. So using your phone, video calling, text, Snapchat, whatever platform you're comfortable with to stay connected with the people you love is so, so important. It might be your first time trying out video chat. You might be nervous to try it. It might feel silly, but it is so necessary to stay connected. I know when I first used video chat, I couldn't stop looking at myself in the corner of the screen, and it can be a little bit, I suppose, it can be embarrassing to do it, but it connects you with your loved ones at a deeper level than just a phone call. And especially for kids that you can't see, kids find it very difficult to listen to you on a phone conversation, but there's something about, at least if they can see you, that they can show you some of the artwork they've been working on, and they can dance around, feel like my nephews were doing for me the other night, that it does help you stay connected with other people. And, remembering that you can connect with your pets and animals too. Do things that you enjoy. Make time every single day to do something that you enjoy. Whether that's reading, painting, doing a puzzle, watching TV, meditating, whatever it is, it's important to do things that uplift you. So setting a little bit of time every day to do something that's important for you is so important at this time. So positive emotions, taking a few minutes to focus on what's going well at the moment. What positive thing can you do today? What are you grateful for? What inspires you? What amuses you? What intrigues you? Or what fills you with delight? So focusing on things that we are grateful for, focusing on things that are going well, it is important, because the world can seem doom and gloom at the moment, and it can be very hard to get trapped in negative patterns of thinking. So this is all awful, this is never going to end, I'm so worried. Those feelings, while they are very normal and so many people are having those thoughts and feelings at the moment, it is important to kind of break the pattern and start to think about some positive emotions as well. It doesn't necessarily mean letting go of the negative ones, that they're not there, but just that we allow some time to focus on positive emotions. Sorry, I've skipped ahead. Not all superheroes wear capes, and you certainly are superheroes in this moment in time. It is very challenging to be on the front line in this, and it is very challenging to put yourself in the way of danger. But knowing and acknowledging that you are doing such meaningful work and that you are supporting people who need support, it is important to recognise that and to acknowledge that. So the last part of me talking about taking care of your mind is going to be and using an acronym called FACE COVID. And some of you might have seen this online. It comes from a therapist called Dr. Russ Harris. Um, and he has developed this FACE COVID acronym, and I particularly liked it. So I thought it might be helpful to share with you. So the acronym stands for F, focus on what is in your control. A, acknowledge your thoughts and feelings. C, come back into your body. E, engage in what you are doing. C, committed action. O, opening up. V is for values. I is for identifying resources. And D is for disinfect and distance. So focus on what is in your control. In a crisis, fear and anxiety are inevitable. They are normal. They are a very natural responses to challenging situations infused with danger and uncertainty. And it's easy to get lost in worrying and ruminating about all sorts of things that are outside of your control. What might happen in the future, how the virus might affect you and your loved ones or your community or your country or the world for that matter, and what will happen then. But the more we focus on what is in our control, the more or what is not in our control, the more hopeless or anxious we're likely to feel. So the single most useful thing anyone can do in this type of crisis, corona related or otherwise, is to focus on what is in your control. So the corona crisis can affect us in many different ways: physically, emotionally, economically, socially and psychologically. All of us are dealing with the very real challenges of widespread illness and inabilities of healthcare systems to cope with it, social disruption, community disruption, economic fallout, financial problems, and the list goes on and on and on. But it is important to try and focus what is in your control. You can't control what happens in the future. You can't control coronavirus itself or the world economy or how your government manages this kind of mess. And we can control our feelings, I suppose, eliminating all the natural fear and anxiety. We can't control the fact that we do feel anxious about this here and now. But because of what we do here and now, we can make a huge difference, both to ourselves, anyone living with us, and to the community around us. So by focusing on what is in our control, we can make a difference. The reality is we all have control over our behaviour, and we all have a certain amount of control over our thoughts and feelings too. So the number one aim is to take control of our behaviour right here and right now, and respond as effectively as we can to this crisis. So this involves dealing with our inner world, so all of our thoughts and our feelings, and our outer world, so the real problems we're facing. So how do we do this? So when a big storm blows up, the boats in the harbour drop anchor, because they don't, they'll get swept out to sea. So dropping anchor doesn't make the storm go away. Anchors don't control the weather, but it can hold a boat steady in the harbour until the storm passes in its own good time. So similarly, in an ongoing crisis like the corona crisis, we are all going to experience what we call emotional storms. So unhelpful thoughts spinning inside of our head, painful feelings whirling around in our body. And if we're swept away by that storm inside us, there is nothing effective we can do. So it can completely limit our behaviour. So the first practical step in dealing with this kind of anxiety and these kind of feelings is to drop anchor. So using this simple ACE formula. So the ACE formula is acknowledge your thoughts and feelings, come back into your body and engage in what you're doing. And that is how we help you to learn to drop anchor, to take a moment to stop and to ground yourself, so that we can take steps to move on. So the F is focusing on what is in your control. And what is in your control is your behaviour, your thoughts and your feelings. So acknowledging your thoughts and feelings. So this is the first step in the ACE model. Look inside yourself and try to silently and most importantly kindly acknowledge whatever is showing up inside you. So thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, sensations, urges. Take a moment to check in with yourself. Try and be compassionate when you're looking inwards at yourself. You might have feelings and thoughts and emotions going on inside you that you don't particularly like. But try and take the stance of a curious scientist, observing what's going on in your inner world, and try and put it into words and say them silently to yourself. Try and be non-judgmental about these feelings. Don't judge yourself for having certain thoughts or feelings. Try and be kind and compassionate towards yourself. It can be helpful to remember that thoughts are not facts. They are just thoughts. Try separating them from you. So instead of saying, I am worried, try and saying, there's my mind worrying again. Or replace, I am very sad with, I am having feelings of sadness. That can help separate your thoughts and feelings from you as a person and allow you to acknowledge them in a way that is non-judgmental, that is curious, and that is kind and compassionate. The C stands for coming back into your body. So once you have acknowledged your thoughts and feelings, and while still holding that in your mind, we want you to try and come back in and connect with your physical body. You'll have to find your own way of doing this that works for you, but you could try some or all of the following. So you could try slowly pushing your feet hard into the floor. Slowly straightening up your back and spine. So if you're sitting, sit upright and forward in your chair. Slowly pressing your fingertips together. Slowly stretching your arms or neck. Try shrugging your shoulders or taking a few slow, deep breaths right into your tummy. So you want to be breathing in for about 4 seconds, holding it, and out for about 5. So in and out. Slow, measured breathing. Just a note here, when we talk about coming back into your body, we are not trying to escape, avoid, or distract ourselves from what's happening in our inner world. The aim is to remain aware of our thoughts and feelings and continue to acknowledge their presence, but also to try and connect with our body and actively move it. So the psychology department are currently working on videos and exercises that we're going to be available soon, that we're going to be putting up on the CT library in addition to this presentation, that can help guide you through some exercises that help you come back into your body and some mindful exercises to help you be in the moment. So the E stands for engage in what you are doing. So when we talk about engaging in what you're doing, we're talking about getting a sense of where you are and refocusing your attention on the activity you are doing. So find your own way of doing this. But again, here's some suggestions that you might be able to try. So look around the room and notice 5 things you can see. Notice 3 or 4 things you can hear. Notice what you can smell or taste or sense in your nose and mouth. Notice what you are doing. And then end the exercise by giving your full attention to the task or activity at hand. Engage in what you are doing. Pay attention to it. Try not to let your mind wander. And if your mind does wander, notice that it's wandering. Notice what thoughts or sensations you are having. And then trying to bring your mind back to what you're doing. So again, try not to be judgmental if your mind wanders a lot. That's okay. It's very normal for our mind to wander when we're trying to pay attention for something. This is a skill that we have to practice. So ideally trying to run through the ACE formula or the ACE cycle slowly 3 or 4 times, and that turns it into a 2 to 3 minute exercise. So acknowledge your thoughts and feelings, connect with your body, and engage in what you're doing. So that's FACE, and now we're looking at COVID. So the COVID acronym, the C stands for committed action. So committed action means effective action, guided by your core values. Action you take because it is truly important to you. Action you take even if it brings up difficult thoughts and feelings. So when we're talking about committed action, we're talking about continuing to do actions that are in line with your core values. What do you believe is right in the world? And doing actions that do that. You do this every day at work. Every day when you turn up to support somebody who needs your help, when you are kind to somebody, when you are caring for them, when you are supporting them with meeting whatever need they have, because you believe that they deserve compassion and honesty and kindness in the world, even in this uncertain world. That is committed action. That is doing action that is in line with your core values and your core beliefs. Using the ACE formula, you have a lot of control over your actions. So it makes it easier to do things that truly matter. So at the moment, it's important to focus on actions that matter. Focus on actions that are in line with your values. And obviously that includes all of the protective measures that we've been hearing over and over and over again to fight against coronavirus. So frequent hand washing, social distancing, disinfecting. We know all of that's there. But in addition to those fundamentals, consider what are the simple ways to look after yourself, to look after those you live with and those that you can realistically help, i.e. the people you care for. What kind, caring, supportive deeds can you do? And doing all of your actions with, while holding your values in place. O is for opening up. Opening up means making room for difficult feelings and being kind to yourself. Difficult feelings are guaranteed to keep on showing up during this crisis. Fear, anxiety, anger, sadness, guilt, loneliness, frustration, confusion, etc., etc., etc. They are all so normal. Now, many of us can have a pattern of way of dealing with these difficult feelings by faking a smile, because it's much easier than explaining why you are feeling the way you are feeling. For lots of people, it can be difficult to open up. We can't stop feelings from arising, in particular difficult feelings. They're normal reactions. But we can make a decision and we can change our behaviour and we can learn to open up and make room for them. Acknowledging that they're normal, allowing them to be there even though they hurt, and treating ourselves kindly. Remember, self-kindness is essential if you want to cope well with this crisis, especially because you were in a caregiver role. So if you're being a little bit hard on yourself, you're judging yourself a little bit too harshly, ask yourself the question: if someone I loved was going through this experience and they're feeling what I were feeling, what would I say towards them? How would I treat them? How would I behave towards them? What would I say or do to them if they told me about this experience? And then try treating yourself the same way. Because I guarantee you're being a lot harder on yourself than you would be on a loved one. And being kind and compassionate to ourselves and to other people during this crisis is essential in maintaining our sanity. V stands for values. Committed action should be guided by your core values. So what do you want to stand for in the face of this crisis? What sort of person do you want to be as you go through this? How do you want to treat yourself and other people? Your values might include love, respect, humour, patience, courage, honesty, caring, openness, kindness, or a number of other values. Look for ways to sprinkle these values into your day and let them guide and motivate your committed action. I is for identify resources. Identify resources for help, assistance, support and advice. These include your friends, your family, your neighbours, health professionals and emergency services. Reach out to your social networks, and if you are able to, offer support to others. Let them know you can be a resource for other people just as they can be for you. Access psychological help if required. The Employee Assist programme is available to discuss personal issues, and Psychology Department and Music Therapist in Cheeverstown are there to support one-to-one with telephone sessions in relation to work, anxiety or stresses. And I'll provide the contact details at the end. The HSE have also set up a direct COVID support line for frontline staff as well. The details of that are also at the end. But one very important aspect of this process involves finding a reliable and trustworthy source of information for updates on the crisis and guidelines for responding for it. Don't listen to fake news that's been spread around WhatsApp in particular, but social media. Only look at reliable resources. And D is for disinfect and distance. Most of you are probably sick of hearing about this already, But you already know it. It is worth repeating. Disinfect your hands regularly. Practice as much social distancing as realistically possible. And by social distancing, I do mean physical distancing. And for the greater good of your community, just continue with your infection control protocols. Remember, we are talking about physical distancing and not cutting off emotionally or socially. So that's FACE, and now we're looking at COVID. So the COVID acronym, the C stands for committed action. So committed action means effective action, guided by your core values. Action you take because it is truly important to you. Action you take even if it brings up difficult thoughts and feelings. So when we're talking about committed action, we're talking about continuing to do actions that are in line with your core values. What do you believe is right in the world? And doing actions that do that. You do this every day at work. Every day when you turn up to support somebody who needs your help, when you are kind to somebody, when you are caring for them, when you are supporting them with meeting whatever need they have because you believe that they deserve compassion and honour. Finally, there's some further reading and references at the end. Please feel free to use that. There is so many references about our supports for minding our mental health online. I know the HSE has some information on their website, the World Health Organization has information on their website, but I can't reiterate enough, in this time of chaos and in this time of crisis, our frontline staff need to be minding their own mental health more than anything else. Stay safe, stay well, and ask for help if you need it.